When Jesus took his final breath on the cross, the earth shook, the sky darkened, the curtain in the temple tore from top to bottom. It was as if creation itself cried out. But while his body lay lifeless in a borrowed tomb, something far more mysterious was happening beyond the reach of human eyes. His spirit had descended into a realm few understand and even fewer dare to speak about. Why would the Son of God, perfect and sinless, enter the underworld? Why would he step into the very place where demons dwell, where chains clatter in darkness, and ancient souls wait in silence? This was not a mistake. It was not a delay before resurrection. It was a mission, a confrontation, a journey into the depths of death itself. For centuries, believers have whispered about what happened in those 3 days. Some say he preached to lost spirits. Others believe he shattered prison gates and led a procession of the redeemed. But one truth rises above them all. Jesus did not go to hell in defeat. He went in victory. And what he did there still echoes across eternity. To understand the resurrection, we must first understand the descent. And once you see what truly happened beneath the earth, you will never see the cross the same way again. Let us begin. What is hell? Really 4 realms the Bible describes. To understand why Jesus descended into what many call hell, we must first unravel what the Bible actually means when it uses that word. In modern English, hell is often imagined as a place of eternal fire ruled by Satan, but Scripture tells a much more layered and complex story. In fact, the Bible speaks of not one, but several distinct realms connected to the afterlife. The first is Sheol. This Hebrew word appears throughout the Old Testament to describe the realm of the dead. It is not portrayed as a place of torment, but rather a shadowy, silent domain where both the righteous and the wicked go when they die. King David spoke of Sheol as a place he could not escape from, even if he made his bed there. Job longed for Sheol as a place of rest from suffering. It was a realm of waiting, not judgment. In the New Testament, the Greek word Hades carries a similar meaning. Like Sheol, Hades is presented as a temporary holding place. In Luke 16, Jesus tells the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Both die. The rich man is in torment in Hades, while Lazarus is comforted in a place called Abraham's bosom. Though separated by a great chasm, they are both in Hades, revealing that this realm contains both anguish and peace, depending on one's standing before God. Then comes Gehenna. This term is strikingly different. Gehenna refers to a real valley just outside ancient Jerusalem, where trash, refuse, and even bodies were burned. But Jesus uses it symbolically. He speaks of Gehenna as the final destination for the unrepentant, a place where the fire is not quenched and the worm does not die. Gehenna represents not the temporary condition of death, but the permanent judgment of the wicked. And finally, there is the lake of fire. Mentioned in the book of Revelation, this is not merely a poetic image. It is described as the second death, the ultimate place of separation from God. Here, death and Hades themselves are thrown into the fire. This is not where Jesus went. This is where judgment ends. And even Satan himself is cast into it. When we see these 4 realms, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, and the lake of fire, we begin to realize that Jesus' descent was not into a fiery pit of eternal torment. It was into a realm of wading into the spiritual depths where the dead resided before the gates of heaven were opened. But why would he go there at all? To understand that, we must first clear away the false images many of us have been taught. The misconceptions, what hell is not. Throughout history and pop culture, hell has often been portrayed as Satan's personal empire, a place where he rules with a pitchfork in hand, mocking the damned and presiding over their torment. But the Bible offers no such picture. In fact, it says something very different. Hell is not the devil's kingdom. It is his prison. In Matthew 25, Jesus says that the eternal fire was prepared not for humanity, but for the devil and his angels. It is not a throne room. It is a sentence. Revelation describes Satan being bound and cast into the abyss, and finally into the lake of fire. His fate is not dominance, it is destruction. Another dangerous misconception is the idea of hell as a place of rebellion or camaraderie. Some mock the idea of judgment by saying they would rather party in hell than worship in heaven. But Jesus himself described hell as a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Not revelry, but regret. Not celebration, but utter loneliness. There are no friendships in hell, only isolation from the presence of God. Then there is the belief in purgatory, a temporary place of purification where souls can earn their way into heaven. This idea, while held by some traditions, is not found in Scripture. Hebrews tells us that it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. There is no halfway house. The work of salvation must be completed before the final breath. That is why the cross matters so deeply. Another common confusion is the immediacy of judgment. Some believe that the wicked are thrown into eternal fire the moment they die. But Scripture reveals a final judgment still to come. Until then, the dead wait. Some in torment, others in peace. But all await the great reckoning described in Revelation. And finally, there are those who believe in annihilationism, the idea that the soul is simply destroyed after death, rather than enduring eternal separation. While this is debated among Christians, the traditional interpretation of Scripture speaks of eternal punishment, not because God is cruel, but because sin carries a weight that only grace can lift. By clearing away these misconceptions, we can begin to understand why Jesus would descend to such a place. It was not punishment, it was purpose. And what he did there would change everything. The descent begins. What happened the moment Jesus died? The moment Jesus gave up his spirit, the earth trembled. The sky turned black. The veil of the temple was torn in two. But something else happened, something beneath the surface. His soul did not linger among the living. It descended. Jesus had spoken of this moment long before. He told the crowds that just as Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of the fish, so would the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. Not metaphorically, literally. And when Peter preached after the resurrection, he quoted Psalm 16, saying that God would not abandon his Holy One to Sheol, meaning Jesus truly went there. This descent was not accidental. It was not delay. It was mission. The crucifixion was not the end. It was the gateway to a cosmic confrontation. While his disciples mourned and the stone sealed the tomb, Jesus was entering a realm no living man had returned from, a place of shadows, silence, and waiting. He was not afraid. He was not bound. He entered as a king, stepping into enemy territory, holding authority that could not be contested. What followed next was not suffering. It was proclamation. The proclamation Jesus preaches in the abyss. In one of the most mysterious passages of Scripture, Peter tells us that after his death, Jesus went and preached to the spirits in prison. These were not the lost who died recently. They were ancient souls, disobedient in the days of Noah, souls who had been locked in spiritual confinement for ages. But why would Jesus speak to them? was it a second chance? Peter never says they were offered salvation. He says Jesus made a proclamation, a declaration. He was announcing victory. The cross had accomplished what centuries of sacrifice could not. The curse was broken. The serpent's head had been crushed. Some scholars believe that Jesus was also declaring triumph over rebellious spiritual beings, fallen angels who had corrupted mankind. Whether these were the same spirits imprisoned from Genesis 6 or another category, his message was the same. The battle is over. The Lamb has overcome. In that moment, the abyss was not a chamber of silence. It became a courtroom where the king read the verdict. Death would no longer hold the righteous. Sin would no longer separate. And Satan would no longer have the last word. But he did more than proclaim. He came to unlock the gates. The liberation setting the captives free. Scripture tells us that when Christ ascended, he led captivity captive. This poetic phrase points to something remarkable, that Jesus on his way up brought others with him, souls who had long awaited the Messiah, the righteous who had trusted in the promises of God but could not yet enter heaven. Luke's gospel gives us a glimpse in the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Before the cross, even the faithful were not in heaven. They were in Abraham's bosom, a place of comfort, but still within Hades. Their sins had been covered, not yet cleansed. But now, with Jesus' blood shed, the door could finally open. Imagine the scene. David, Moses, Ruth, Isaiah, all waiting, watching. Then the light breaks through the walls of Sheol, and the voice of the Messiah echoes through the chambers. They rise, the gates fall, and heaven receives its first wave of redeemed souls. This was not just liberation, it was the first fruits of the resurrection, a parade of triumph, a procession of those who were dead but now live. And Jesus, their shepherd, leads them home. And in doing so, he takes something else with him, something that changes everything. The authority claimed, Christ holds the keys. In the opening of Revelation, Jesus appears to John in glory, eyes like fire, voice like rushing waters. And he says something that shakes the spirit world. I hold the keys of death and Hades. Keys mean power, ownership, final say. When Jesus descended, he did not just walk through the gates. He took the keys. Death no longer belonged to the grave. It belonged to him. This changes the fate of every believer. We do not fear the grave because Jesus now stands on the other side of it. We do not tremble at death because the one who went in has come out holding the authority of heaven and earth. His descent was not a step down. It was a march through enemy territory to reclaim what was stolen and to shut the mouth of the accuser forever. And when the stone rolled away, the world saw what the underworld already knew. The resurrection, the empty tomb, was never the start. On the third day, the women arrived at the tomb to find it empty. Angels declared that he had risen. The grave clothes were folded. The guards had fled. But what had begun was not a return to life. It was the revelation of a victory already won. The resurrection was not the beginning. It was the unveiling. Jesus had descended, conquered, liberated, and now he returned not as the man of sorrows, but as the risen King. The marks in his hands and feet were no longer wounds. They were trophies. The crown of thorns had been replaced by the crown of glory. And the tomb was open not so that he could come out, but so that we could look in and believe. His journey from cross to grave, to Hades and back again, was not just a story of suffering. It was the blueprint of redemption. The path we now follow, Because he went first. When Jesus stepped into the grave, he stepped into the deepest fear humanity has ever known. Not just death, but what lies beyond it. He walked into the silence of Sheol, the shadows of Hades, and the stronghold of the unseen. And he did not flinch, because he knew what waited on the other side. The gates of death were not a wall to him. They were a doorway. This mystery reminds us of something profound. Redemption did not stop at the cross. It extended into the very depths of existence. Jesus left no part of creation untouched by his grace. No soul too far, no realm too dark, no enemy too strong. He reached downward so we might rise upward. What does that mean for us today? It means your fear of death is not final. Your past, no matter how heavy, does not lock you out of heaven. The one who holds the keys has already walked through every valley you will ever face, and he carries the authority to bring you home. So now the question is not just what Jesus did in hell. The question is, will you follow the one who went there for you? If this message stirred something in your heart, consider liking this video and subscribing to support more deep biblical mysteries. Share this with someone who may be facing darkness and needs to know the victory has already been won. And if you have thoughts, questions, or reflections on what Jesus did during those 3 hidden days, we invite you to share them in the comments. This is not just a story. It is a conversation that shapes eternity. God bless you. And may the light that shattered the gates of death guide you always.